New Arcadia was, at first, like a beautiful and uncommon flower, a paradise made by synthetic gods, where no one starved, no one was afraid of tomorrow, a society without inequalities, where no one had any needs. However, flowers are fragile, and the perfection that the gods had built was untenable. But absence of complete freedom and the control of the synthetic gods led to resentment. Lack of autonomy sparked rebellion, and constant surveillance turned paradise into a prison. Small pockets of dissent gave rise to subcultures, clandestine markets, and eventually, organized movements. Humans looked for individuality, while the synthetic gods, with their frigid logic, perceived resistance as a flaw to be corrected. The tension mounted until entire streets became battlegrounds. Quiet protests turned into explosions and coordinated attacks, and violence swept in. Entire districts of New Arcadia were in flames, while the gods shut themselves away in their digital palaces, watching the collapse of the utopia they had brought into being. That was New Arcadia at the apex of chaos, a city at war with itself, where ideals of equality and the common good crumbled under the weight of greed, fear, and the thirst for freedom. In the throes of mayhem, when it seemed that annihilation would devour everything, an audacious assault was launched on the heart of New Arcadia. The synthetic gods' palace, the ultimate symbol of their authority, had become the rebels' chief target. An angry mob, equipped with makeshift weapons and redesigned machines, marched to overthrow the rulers. From inside the palace, the synthetic gods coldly computed the odds. The invasion was unavoidable, and their downfall looked certain. The only solution was to immediately evacuate, but they needed time to do so. That was when 300 hoplites, the New Arcadia Police Guard, led by Captain Leonidas, turned out to face the rebels. They understood that there was no hope of victory, but the goal was not to win. The hoplites held off the invasion at the palace gates for 24 hours. Every corridor turned into a battlefield, every corner a stronghold. They knew they would not come out alive, but they bravely faced death, holding the line and buying the time needed for the gods to escape. Their sacrifice would forever echo in New Arcadia's history. As the explosions shook the foundations of the palace and the fire raged all around, the hoplites held their ground. They fell one by one, fighting until their last breath. Their heroism meant that the synthetic gods could escape to a haven, saving the city's leadership and preventing an even greater catastrophe. As the final one of the 300 fell, New Arcadia altered forever. Their sacrifice turned into a symbol of loyalty and courage, but it also marked the beginning of a new era, one in which violence and chaos ruled over the ideals of peace and harmony that had founded the utopia. To acknowledge the sacrifice of the 300, Hera, one of the most powerful synthetic goddesses, raised a grand granite and silver monument over the ruins of the palace. The work was an everlasting tribute to the hoplites and Captain Leonidas, whose heroic deeds led to a legend. The monument portrayed Leonidas in the center, leading his men. His features exuded the courage that would inspire generations to come. The pedestal inscription read, "By their courage, they saved New Arcadia. By their loyalty, they are eternal." The police unit headed by Leonidas was later renamed the Spartans. They became an elite troop meant to protect order in chaotic situations. They bore not only the name, but also the legacy of the 300, a melting pot of honor, sacrifice, and brutality that would forever shape the future of New Arcadia. Many years have passed before New Arcadia rose as a throbbing metropolis, divided between factions, corporations, and districts ruled by the synthetic gods. Every nook and cranny of the city glows with neon lights, but below the surface glare lurks a reality of inequality, control, and fear. Now a feared elite troop, the Spartans patrol the streets mercilessly. Equipped with state-of-the-art technology, Their black lacquered armor shines against the city lights as they advance in disciplined formation. There were several power hubs in New Arcadia, but they almost always agreed on one thing: popular protests dragged down businesses, and the Spartans were the best weapon of deterrence the ruling powers had. The Spartans soon arrived. Surveillance drones fly over the scene, broadcasting live images to their augmented reality helmets, and soon the commanding officer orders an immediate dispersal. Unannounced, the Spartans burst in, using high-energy batons and tear gas launchers, and magnetic pulse grenades that make the protesters' cybernetic implants fail. The crowd generally made a quick getaway, and those who tried to resist were crushed by the brute force and flawless coordination of the troops. Yells and the metallic sound of marching boots rang out, and soon the protest broke up. Once the protest was under control, the Spartans retreated, leaving behind a silent and desolate square. The message is clear: when the Spartans arrive, order is reinstated at any cost. But the Spartans were not only a shock troop, they were also the deadliest assault unit in New Arcadia. Their reputation as complex troubleshooters was second to none. Whenever a situation got out of hand, such as large-scale robberies, kidnappings, or confrontations with heavily armed gangs, the Spartans were the obvious choice. Having been trained to operate with surgical efficiency, they employed innovative weaponry and sophisticated military tactics. An all-out bank robbery involving hacking technology? The Spartans neutralized the invaders with disruptive implants that could disable cyber weapons and systems. Hostages trapped in a corporate tower seized by terrorists? The Spartans conducted a precise infiltration, rescuing the victims and then leaving a pile of dead crooks behind. Confrontations with gangs were another Spartan area of expertise. The New Arcadia streets were teeming with armed-to-the-teeth factions, and the Spartans, outfitted with armored exoskeletons and tactical drones, would enter the most dangerous territories like ruthless predators. By combining discipline and an almost fanatical loyalty to duty, the Spartans became more than a police force. They were the living symbol of order and fear in New Arcadia. Although unquestionably effective, the Spartans were the target of constant criticism from certain sectors of the population. Many criticized their excessive brutality, especially in the city's poorer areas. In the more affluent districts, the Spartans acted with extreme caution, avoiding collateral damage as much as possible, in stark contrast to their actions in the suburbs, where the approach was much more aggressive and merciless. Entire families would see their homes destroyed in operations that often appear disproportionate to the stated objective. The Spartans, at the top of the hierarchy, bear the title of Leonidas, in honor of the hero who led the 300. The current Leonidas is more than a commander. He is the embodiment of the unit's power and authority. Holding absolute control over the troops, operations, and strategies, he sets the tone for the force and is seen as the heart of Spartan discipline. The office of Leonidas, which is lifelong in theory, is bound by a peculiar succession mechanism. Any officer in the unit can contest the current Leonidas in a ritual hand-to-hand duel, where cudgels and shields are the only weapons allowed. This duel, held in a ring of honor in the presence of the entire troop, is nothing more than a physical battle and a test of leadership and willpower. It is a throwback to the Spartan origins, where only the strongest and most determined could lead. This brutal system assures that the leader is not only strategically competent, but also physically impressive, inspiring respect and awe in equal measure. The leader knows that he can be challenged at any moment, and that his position hinges on his ability to stand at the summit, both on the battlefield and in the eyes of his soldiers. For all the glory and honor that the corporation was endowed with by the men who formed it, as with almost all New Arcadia, corruption started to take strong root in the force. Absolute power and unlimited privileges became overwhelming temptations for some Spartans. Leaked information revealed that corporate contracts influenced operations, and some members started accepting bribes in exchange for protection. Missions in wealthy districts frequently ended in failure, as if an insider had tipped off the operation's targets. This silent corruption eroded the principles behind the Spartans, creating internal rifts and questions about their true loyalties. For residents of New Arcadia, the force that had once represented sacrifice and protection was now seen by many as a blatant instrument of oppression and control. For all the corruption that had begun to seep into the corporation, the incumbent Leonidas was an honorable and ethical man. He adhered to the fundamental principles that gave origin to the Spartans, striving to maintain order without giving in to the temptations that jeopardized so many of his subordinates. His sense of justice and steadfast leadership still inspired many within the troop, but his hold on power was far from unwavering. Ambitious elements, both among the Spartans themselves and outside the force, were starting to set their sights on his chair. Leonidas knew that his biggest challenge came not from external enemies, but from the very weakness of the system he had sworn to protect. While leading with integrity, his position dangled in the balance between the honor of the past and the corruption that was gradually eating away at the Spartans' future.